Hey ghouls, Penny here with a special announcement. Next week will be the 100th episode of Ghouls Night In. And instead of dropping in your podcast feed, we will be recording the episode live on Midge's YouTube channel. We're going to be answering prompts, sharing stories, and just having a lot of fun, so we hope you can join us. We will be live on Tuesday, September 5th at 7 p.m. Central on Midge Munster's YouTube, and then the recording will drop in the feed as usual later that week. You can find details in the show notes and on our Instagram. See you there. Goodbye. Hello, friends, and welcome back to Ghouls Night In, the spooky chat show with your best ghoul friends. I'm Penny Snark.
And I'm Midge Munster. And Penny, you and I just talked in our Midsummer Scream recap episode about a film. And in that episode, I said, well, I could do a whole episode about that. And so here I am doing a whole episode about that.
Hey! I love when that happens.
Mostly because so I did a recent Instagram poll, and it has come to my attention that a stark number of people have not seen the absolute banger cult classic of a film, 2001's 13 Ghosts.
Dun, dun, dun.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that you have not seen 13 Ghosts.
I haven't, but I legit was looking to see if it was streaming somewhere after we had talked about it, because I was like, I should see that, and I couldn't find it.
Well, I hate to give you the Silence of the Lambs treatment that you gave me, but there are going to be some spoilers in this for 13 Ghosts.
Fine. Bring it on. I'm ready.
But I intend to change today the number of you who have not yet seen this movie, and I hope that this, sometimes you just need someone to sell you on a film to watch it, and I hope I can be that
Yes.
person for some of you today. So, because let me tell you, Penny, this film has everything. This has Tony Shalhoub, which is all you should really need, first of all. It's got Matthew Lillard and all of his glorious spit acting that we have come to love. We've got Miss Honey from Matilda gone bad. We've got Raw Digga saving the day. It's just like an absolute favorite comfort movie of mine. And I love it because it is so just of its time. Which of course was the time that I was a young human starting to fall in love with spooky and horror. So I also love this movie because it has so much of its own lore, and a lot of that gets so convoluted and confusing, which makes me love it even more because it's just stupid. So we're going to get into all of that today, but before we do, we need a little bit of history. So the first thing you need to know is that 13 Ghosts, the 2001 version, is a Dark Castle film. So if you're unfamiliar, Dark Castle is a production company that was formed in 1999 by a bunch of bigwigs that have really done the damn thing. So we've got Joel Silver from The Matrix. We've got Robert Zemeckis of Forrest Gump fame.
Boom.
And we've got Gilbert Adler, who did Tales from the Crypt. So we've got some real heavy hitters here, and they came together to put Dark Castle on the map to focus specifically on horror films. And the name Dark Castle was a tribute to director William Castle, who directed the original film 13 Ghosts, which came out in 1960. So that film is 13 Ghosts, whereas the 2001 remake, if you've ever seen the cover, is 13 spelled out and then with the number 13 as the T and the E. It's the stupidest. I'm sure it drives your what do you call that, kerning with the lettering?
Oh
yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it would drive you insane if you looked at it too long. But Dark Castle, they at first were focusing solely on remakes, and their first film was actually a remake of House on Haunted Hill,
Oh,
which
hey.
many of you listeners know is a 1959 Vincent Price classic, one of the favorites of our own Pennifer Snark.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you seen that remake, Penny?
I have not, but I have heard people say that they want to take a second look at it.
Yeah, I here's what I'm going to say. It is not a good interpretation of the Vincent Price film.
Yes.
It has very little to do with that film. However, it is a lot of fun, and it was a strong first outing for Dark Castle in the sense that it really established their style and what they were bringing to the table.
Mhm.
To name a few other Dark Castle films, just to get everybody on the same page of the feel that we're dealing with here, they also produced Orphan, Ghost
Okay.
Ship, which if you've seen Ghost Ship,
The
a personal
infamous
favorite,
ghost ship.
the infamous Ghost Ship, another personal favorite of mine, the 2005 remake of House of Wax featuring one Miss Paris Hilton,
Mhm.
and of course Gothica, which is also a cult classic. So all of these kind of weird niche pieces that are not necessarily what people call good, but are just a benchmark of this early 2000s horror that
Yeah.
was a breed all of its own. And so that's where you're starting to see where we're headed with 13 Ghosts. Now, like I mentioned, 13 Ghosts is a remake of a 1960s film. Now, I actually have not ever seen the original 13 Ghosts, and I really need to. That's probably going to be actually maybe what I do tonight now that I've been on a bender
Yes.
reading about all this stuff again. But I do know that the original has basically the same storyline. The gist of the film is that a nephew who is struggling financially inherits a mansion from an estranged, super eccentric uncle character.
As you
And
do.
you know how you get a big spooky house. But there are a few caveats. One being that the family has to, in order to inherit the mansion, has to agree to live in the house and not sell it. Otherwise, it will
Mhm.
be repossessed by the state. And then the other small thing is that there are 12 ghosts trapped inside the house. No
Ah.
big, yeah, no big
Oh,
deal, right?
there's two regular stipulations.
Yeah, just the normal caveats that you have to sign paperwork for when you move into a house. It's totally normal.
Yeah.
Uh, so that is also the case of the 1960s film. But in the 2001 film, we're looking at mostly the same plot line, except it gets stupid in a really fun way. Where in the original film, the ghosts have been like collected by the uncle who's like traveling the world, and then they need the 13th ghost to set them free, which is true in the 2001 film as well, except here we've added a ridiculous steampunk technology, like turn of the millennium age craziness into the mix because it's the early aughts and we can. And that for me is what makes this movie extra fun. Um, the house itself is a character, and I mean, I love a spooky house film, and this is at its core is a spooky house film. Um, so our nephew in this instance is Tony Shalhoub, who is named Arthur Criticos in this world, and his two kids, Bobby and Kathy, and they have fallen into financial hardship after they lose their home in a house fire, which unfortunately also killed the kid's mother and Arthur's wife.
Mm,
So we got a grieving dad and
yeah.
his two kiddos. We also have, as I mentioned, Rodiga as the nanny Maggie. We'll get into her more later, but she's iconic. But their luck seems to change. A lawyer shows up to tell Arthur that his deceased uncle, that he was not super familiar with, Cyrus, has left him his entire mansion and fortune and all the goods. Um, and we learn in the opening scene of the film that Cyrus is this just wild old kook who has traveled the world collecting ghosts with the help of a psychic named Dennis Rafkin, played by our boy Matthew Lillard.
Nice.
Yes. Um, what we don't know until later, when Arthur and his family show up to the house, is that Cyrus has built this house specifically as a containment unit for these ghosts. And first, I'll take a little pit stop here to chat about the house in this film. Very different from any other haunted house movie. Um, it's almost kind of giving original House on Haunted Hill. Um,
Ooh, yeah.
Very modern, sleek house. When they arrive, the house is like completely made of glass. That's like its whole deal. And Tony Shalhoub's character makes a really stupid offhanded comment about like, "Okay, kids, first rule: no throwing stones." Oh, yuck, 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 yuck. um, but really, really cool set design. I love the house is massively impractical. There's like if you were actually inheriting this house and you walked into it, you'd be like, nobody lives here, right? Like this is not a
Right, this is like a
house.
show thing.
This is bizarre. Um, so they show up. When they get there, Matthew Lillard is pretending to be an electrician to like gain access to the house, and he's like, "Yeah, I gotta work on the grid, you know." Um, and we find out he's, Cyrus was supposed to pay him and he didn't pay him, so
Yeah.
he's trying to get access to get his dollar bills. But shortly after everyone has entered the house, the mechanism that starts the house gets set off and everyone's trapped in the house. So that's kind of our base. And we learn through Matthew Lillard's character that Cyrus had basically built this house as a containment unit for the ghosts, both acting as a prison to hold them, but then eventually as a machine that is called the Ocularis Infernum, or the Eye of Hell,
Mm.
and that will basically use the energy of the dead to open a hellmouth and give Cyrus all this crazy power. You know, how villains be going after power.
Oh, always. You know how they do.
Yeah. So in order for the machine to work, Cyrus needed 13 ghosts, but and the house is designed in a way that the ghosts are behind these glass panels that have Latin inscriptions on them that contain them, because the ghosts can't pass the like spells or incantation Latin on the glass. But as the mechanism gets set off, the ghosts slowly, one by one, start being released into the house with everyone trapped
Oh,
inside.
shit.
Yes, very scary. Um, Now for myself, and I think most fans of this film, the ghosts are what make the movie so great. This is a really grade A example of practical effects in the early 2000s. The film's effects are top notch. Well, the practical effects are top and maybe I'm like, I'm gonna sell you on this, and I'm like, actually it's ridiculous and stupid. But one note I will make here is that the editing of this film is very true to the man who directed this also directed Ghost Ship, and if you've seen either of these films, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, it's a lot of glitchy, like fast shot editing.
Yeah.
So it's almost a bummer, because the practical effects on these ghosts and the design of each character and the time they took with each ghost is really impeccable, and then you actually don't see the ghosts that much.
Yeah.
It's like the Beetlejuice effect, like they're not on screen very long. um but there are 12 ghosts trapped in the house, and each of them fit this archetype, basically, that Cyrus had to fill out each archetype of these 12 ghosts in order to get the machine to work. And the archetypes build out what is called the Black Zodiac. So I
So
will
goth.
say, huh? So
So
goth.
goth.
Yeah, it's very
I was
goth.
like, I follow the Black Zodiac, so
Literally, like, this movie's lore is amazing and I love it. um I will say again, this film barely touches on the ghosts themselves or their backstories, which I think is it's a disservice, honestly. And I know right now, something that also made me want to do this episode is Dread Central and some people have been putting out articles that there are talks about a series, a 13 Ghost series that
Mm.
would dedicate an episode to each ghost and their backstory. And I'm
See,
very
this
interested in that.
it's interesting to like actually be hearing you tell me what this movie is about because I have no idea what this movie was, and in the back of my head I was just like, oh well, it's probably like an anthology movie about
Right.
13 different ghosts.
And that's exactly, and you know I love anthology horror. That's, I
Oh
mean, Trick or
yes.
Treat obviously is my favorite movie. So I think that's why I fell in love with this, is because there is an anthology here. It's just not
This is
expressly
not what
ever
they
put.
made.
It's just not what they made. But then I kind of love that they put all this like meaningless backwork into this film. It's hilarious. Anyway, um hopefully that series comes to pass, but for now you'll have to get by with Midge's abridged guide to the Black Zodiac. So
the Amid
the abridged,
the
the
Amid
abridged version. So let's meet the ghosts, shall we?
please.
uh Starting out with number one, the firstborn son. So, in life, the firstborn son is a boy named Billy Michaels, and Billy was a kiddo who was obsessed with cowboys and Indians and playing Western games. And he died from an arrow that was fired into his head by another boy during a game, during
Whoops.
a duel. uh, Billy is, so what you'll notice as we go through the zodiac here is like one starts pretty chill. um, Billy is like spooky. All the ghosts are spooky. He's spooky, but he's pretty much harmless. He gives you a fright if you see him, but he's like, he's pretty harmless. And then they get severely more harmful as we move forward.
Okay, yeah, because I was like, are these like just like people ghosts that are just chilling, or are they like monster ghosts?
They're people ghosts, but they're people with horrific backstories, most of them.
Ooh.
So here's your trigger warning for some dark stuff coming up here towards the end. But if you're squeamish. So number two is the torso.
Mm.
Much yeah, we
I
jump
already don't
really
like this.
fast. We jump really fast from small child to the
Like just
torso.
a kid who had a a childhood mishap to the
To the
torso.
torso. So the torso is exactly what it sounds like. He's a disembodied torso wrapped in cellophane. In life, the torso was part of the compulsive gambler named Jimmy Gambino. And Gambino was also a bookie, but his gambling then, made it difficult for him to pay out the people who he was
Mhm.
booking for, and eventually ended up in trouble with the mob and was killed and cut up, dumped into the ocean. Something interesting about this ghost is that the torso is actually played by actor Daniel Wesley, who is a double amputee of his
Oh.
legs, and so this actor does an excellent job. I mean, he kind of has his, the way that they edit it, he has like arms attached to the torso still, and then his head is separate. Um, but it's really well done effect because this actor actually knows how to use his body without his
Yeah.
legs. And really haunting effect. It's super, super cool. Um, Number three is the Bound Woman. The Bound Woman was in life named Susan LeGros, and she was a very, like, you know, privileged, cute, rich, popular cheerleader type who was dating the captain of the football team. Unfortunately, on prom night, he found her canoodling with another
Mm.
man
Gasp.
and had a pretty nasty reaction to that. He bludgeoned the other man to death and strangled Susan with his tie. Again, we're getting, most of these are still kind of just like sad ghosts. Like they're not super. They don't do a lot. They're not like attacking people. Just like,
Yeah.
oh, that's
That
too
sucks.
bad.
Yeah.
That sucks. But I feel like they did a good job of, because the energy of this ghost, the ghosts are supposed to be powering the house. It's different types of residual energy. So some of them are like sad, some of them are angry. Number 4, the archetype is the withered lover. Y'all want a twist? Get ready for it. So this is a part in the movie that I think they wanted to go harder than it did. Like I think we're all supposed to be like, but it doesn't really have that effect. um, but this ghost is Jean Criticos. You might recognize that name from being the main
The
character's last name
mom?
also. So yes, this is the wife of
Oh,
Arthur.
shit.
And as previously mentioned, Jean died from their house catching on fire on Christmas when a rogue fireplace log rolled out and caught their presents on fire and caught the tree and the house and all that. So this adds an interesting layer to the ghost aspect because the kids do kind of they're getting lured through the house by like malicious ghosts, but then also their mom is there and is trying to protect them, even though we don't see that until later. And then obviously Arthur gets to eventually confront his wife, and it's an interesting plot point. It's not quite as emotionally effective as I think they thought it was with all the other extreme camp happening around it,
Yeah.
but it is interesting. And when Arthur finds out that his wife is one of the ghosts that his uncle trapped there, he is not happy.
No, that's not a cool uncle move.
It's not a cool thing to do. And I now I'm having trouble remembering. I believe that it's possible that the idea is thrown around that like Arthur made that happen because he needed that ghost. Like that
Oh,
he might have been responsible for Jean's
for the
death.
fire, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember for certain if that's true, but that's seeming to me like that was part of the plot. Um a lot of details get lost
I
in
was
here.
gonna say the fact that we've got like 13 ghosts seems like you're gonna lose some of the finer points of some of these.
The fine details are messy at best. So number 5 is the Torn Prince. The Torn Prince was Royce Clayton in life. He was a gifted baseball player in high school, and that is why his ghost in the film is often shown holding a baseball bat as his weapon of choice. He was destined to be an all-star player. Unfortunately, that did not happen because fate threw a curveball at Royce when he was 17. A Also, it's important to note, I forgot to say, he's from like the 1950s, so he's in like his little leather jacket, and he's very like,
Aw.
ooh. So a greaser challenged him to a drag race, and
Yeah.
unbeknownst to Royce, the opponent had cut his brake line, and so Royce loses control of the car, resulting in an accident that ended his life and tore a large amount of flesh from his chest and face, hence the Torn Prince.
Yeah.
Number 6, a personal favorite, the Angry Princess. This is probably there are 2 ghosts in this film that I feel like even if you've never seen this film, you probably would recognize them if you saw them, and Angry Princess is one of them. In life, she was Dana Newman and was an incredibly beautiful woman. There's several comments from characters in the movie about how she was like beyond beautiful when she was alive. But unfortunately, everyone thought she was beautiful except herself, and so she was working for a not cosmetologist. Is that right?
Could be.
No, that's a makeup person.
Yeah.
She worked for like a plastic surgeon,
Oh, a
is what I'm trying to
cosmetic
say.
surgery.
Cosmetic surgeon. Yes, thank you. And she was constantly, trying to change her appearance. She would have basically be paid by her work in plastic surgery, trying to fix imperfections that didn't exist. And she just had a string of bad relationships and things that destroyed her self image. So after a while, she started trying to self administer surgeries after hours in the clinic where she worked and botched her own facial surgery, leaving her blind in one of her eyes and disfigured her face. At which point, then Dana took her own life with a butcher knife because she was convinced she would never be beautiful. It's very sad. So Dana, or the Angry Princess, is, like I said, one of the ghosts that gets the most screen time. She has a whole scene in a bathroom with the daughter Kathy that's very cool and very spooky. She's also, just because she died in a bathtub, she's naked, and so
All right.
yeah, we see some ghost girl boobies, which I think is, because of how the 2000s were with horror, probably why Angry Princess has the most screen time.
Yeah.
However, her prosthetics and things are actually very cool, and she's very, very spooky. So one of my faves. Number 7 is The Pilgrimess. This is Isabella Smith, who was a victim of the Salem witch trial hysteria. And she was accused basically of witchcraft because her village's livestock started dying.
Mm-hmm.
And, like you do, you say, well, it's probably that woman's fault.
Must be.
And because my sheep is dead. So she was sentenced to death by burning, and they put her in a barn, set it on fire. However, she didn't die. She came out unscathed.
Yes.
But then everybody was like, she is a witch, which, I mean, at that point, fair. Um,
Yeah. It's pretty sus.
but yeah, sus Isabella. So they put her in stocks and left her there to die of starvation. So when you see the pilgrimess in the house in 13 Ghosts, she is still locked in the stocks. She's very, very spooky. We hardly see her on screen at all, and it makes me bummed because she's very cool. Her design is awesome. And this is what brought up us doing a thing about this film, was because the pilgrimess cosplayer at Midsummer
Yes.
Scream was so awesome, and I was so excited that someone did that as a cosplay because she's not featured very heavily in the film. Very
It
cool.
was a very cool cosplay.
Yes, did a great job. 8 and 9 go together. They are the Great Child and the Dire Mother. So these two are mother and son. Margaret Shelburne is the mother, who was a little person who worked at a carnival sideshow with her son Harold, who is just a very big boy. And that, unfortunately, is a result of Margaret being assaulted by another member of the sideshow called the Tall Man.
Mm.
So her son is a very, very large man, but he is featured often in a diaper and with like food dribbling down his chin and
Yeah.
chest, because she's treating him as a baby still. Um, so they have a very dependent relationship in life, and as like, I hate the way that this is worded in so many of the backstories. They're like, as a prank, some of the freaks murdered Margaret. Like, ha ha,
Classic prank.
classic. Where's Ashton? Like, that's hilarious. So Harold, the son, obviously then went berserk and used an axe and killed most of the other people who were a part of the sideshow who had hurt his
I mean,
mother.
that seems fair.
Yeah, and then he himself was killed later by an angry mob for going crazy. Um, but I get it. I also would go axe crazy if people were like, "LOL, we killed your mom,"
Funny
but
prank.
it was a prank. Number 10 is the hammer. This is where we're starting to enter the like really dangerous angry ghost territory.
Mm.
Now the hammer is probably one of my favorite ghosts. He's one of the most dangerous, but his story is also the saddest. Um, so he was born George Markley, and he wasn't a bad person in life. He was a blacksmith in a small town and was falsely accused of theft by a white man who threatened
Ooh.
to banish him from the town that he lived in. And knowing that he was innocent, George stood up to the accuser and refused to leave the town. Was like, I'm a good man. I work. I mind my business. I'm not leaving. And then, as horrible people often do, the man who accused George beat his wife and children to death to send him a message. And in a grief fueled rage, George took his sledgehammer and killed the people who killed his family, which honestly
Also
work.
fair. Fair.
Yeah, I would, yeah, I get it. But when the town discovered what George had done, they dragged him back to his shop, where they tied him to a tree and drove railroad spikes through his body with his own sledgehammer
Ew.
and killed him that way. And then they, as a final FU, because they're terrible people, cut off his hand and replaced it with his sledgehammer. So again, very cool character design.
Yeah.
He's like covered in railroad spikes and has a hammer for an arm. He's very scary, but very, very sad backstory. Number 11 is the Jackal, which is the other cosplayer we saw
Yes.
at Midsummer Scream. And this was the other ghost when I mentioned the Angry Princess. This is the one I feel like most people probably recognize the Jackal, even if you've never seen the movie. So the Jackal was born Ryan Kuhn in 1887. And he's, unlike the Hammer, he's a shithead. He's a bad guy. He was violent and sadistic before he became a spirit. He was a vicious and compulsive sexual predator and serial killer. He did, however, I guess this is supposed to be maybe a redeeming quality. He did seek help for his actions and checked
Okay.
himself into an asylum, and asked for like mental help. But rather than trying to treat him, the facility locked him away, where he slowly lost his mind. He scratched at the walls until his fingernails fell off, so they put him in a straitjacket. And that point, he started biting people. So they put a cage on his head, and that's probably the design that people like recognize
Mhm.
most from 13 Ghosts is him in his straitjacket with his cage head and his face kind of looks like Reagan from The Exorcist. Like he's
I
all,
thought you meant Ronald Reagan.
he kind of looks like
He
Reagan.
kind of looks, which I was like, yeah, I guess.
He'll try to bite you and then teach you about trickle
I
down
was like, seems
economics, and
pretty
it's
evil.
horrifying. Yeah, the most horrible thing we could think
There
of.
you go. It looks
Ronald
like
Reagan.
Ronald Reagan.
uh, no, he kind of looks like Reagan from The
Yeah.
Exorcist.
All right.
But he eventually died in the asylum when it burned down. It There's an interesting like discrepancy here where the story is kind of convoluted that he like chose not to escape because no one else died in the asylum fire, but he like let the flames claim him because he was being punished for his sins, which
Okay.
like honestly, yeah, bud,
Sure.
sorry. Yeah, you rape and kill, you gotta go. But he is definitely the most like volatile spirit, and he be attacking in in the movie. He's very like rah, 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 rah. And then number 12, the big boy. What if that was the archetype name? Big
I
boy.
was gonna say, woo, we already have a big boy.
More or less. This is the Juggernaut.
Oh yeah.
The Juggernaut is Horace Breaker Mahoney. He was he's kind of the final boss of the Black Zodiac, coming in at over 7 feet tall.
Woo.
Horace was also a serial killer who would pick up hitchhikers and offer rides to stranded motorists, only to take them back to the junkyard he worked at and tear them apart with his bare hands.
Shit.
Yeah, big boy. So Horace eventually got caught. His seventh to be victim turned out to be an undercover police officer who had a SWAT team surround the junkyard and try to arrest Horace. But Horace broke free of the handcuffs and killed 3 police officers before he was gunned down. And then at the end, they fired rounds into his corpse just in case, because they kept shooting him and he wouldn't go down. So his ghost not often, his ghost always appears as covered in bullet holes, and he's like big and scary and wearing his junkyard bowler shirt thing. So those are our 12 ghosts. Now, two things here. Like I said, all these ghosts, whether dangerous or not, are very scary to look at. That being said, one of the fun, like goofy little caveats of 13 Ghosts is that you can't see the ghosts unless you're wearing special glasses. So, uh, which actually this is also in the 1960s film.
That's
This
wild.
was not added, which I didn't know. I
They're like, you know
assumed
what
this
you
was
need? Special glasses.
some special little goggles. I thought this was added for the 2000s film because it's so stupid. And it's just so like 2000s. Like, put on these
Right.
crazy,
Put
like,
on these cool goggles,
put on
man.
these Spy Kids glasses and you'll be able to see the ghosts. But yeah, that is from the original script. And
All right.
it does add a fun like element of suspense because there are moments where we as the audience also can't see the ghosts because the characters can't see them, but we can hear and like we know they're there. It's very spooky. So that's but again, then it also adds this element where we don't see the ghosts that frequently.
Yeah.
And as you can see by all that, what, 10 minutes of history of all these ghosts I just read, that that's not really addressed in the film ever. So all these backstories were written, and we don't really use them. We do have one moment where Miss Honey, who is named Kalina in this, gives us like a rundown of the Black Zodiac, but she just gives us the archetypes pretty much. She doesn't really tell us what
Sigh.
these people got going on. In that same moment, when she's describing these ghosts, secondly, here you might notice that I only listed 12 ghosts, but that's not the
Mm,
name of the
that's not
movie.
this movie.
That's not what it's called. And so through this moment with her running down what all we need to make the house work, it is revealed that the 13th ghost that Cyrus needed, the archetype is called the Broken Heart, which is a ghost that must be a person who sacrificed themselves in an act of love. And as the film progresses, we learn that that is why Arthur is in this house.
Oh
uh,
shit.
because supposedly Cyrus, who is, dead, wink wink, who he
Wink,
wink
wink.
wink inherited this house from, um, is not so dead. And when Arthur, basically he, uses that to lure Arthur here and puts Arthur's children in a dangerous position with the ghosts and the
Hmm.
Oculus, assuming that Arthur will then sacrifice himself to save his family, therefore completing the spell. So that's the overall plot. I mean, obviously, we have a few spoilers in there. Cyrus isn't dead. Whoa.
Uh-oh.
um, just so I mean, I'll let you know they don't do a good job of convincing you he ever was, so it's okay. Um,
I was
um,
gonna say, I mean, I feel like that's always kind of your first question when you're like,
right, you're
"Oh
like, oh,
wow,
a
my person,
mysterious dead uncle.
my mysterious uncle who built this elaborate ghost trap
Right,
just
exactly.
happened to die," and it's like, "Oh well,
And
guess
leave it to
that's
me,
that."
who I've never spoken to. Yeah, seems legit. Um, I won't spoil the like ending of the film because I do really think that y'all need to just go take a watch. I per what Penny was just saying, I do believe it is currently streaming on HBO Max and Paramount Plus. I think is where you can watch it.
Ah,
But also you can rent it on Amazon.
sure.
Um, just I will say in conclusion, I know this movie will not be for everybody, and I feel like I was like, I'm gonna sell it, and then I just gave you a bunch of crazy plot points about something wild. Um, but if you are into weird, like fun horror, this is a must watch. It's so campy. It's just a beautiful time capsule of early 2000s horror. It's schlocky. It is legitimately scary at some parts. And again, Matthew Lillard.
How can you say no? I mean,
How can you say
Tony
no?
Shalhoub's a good one too.
Tony Shalhoub, Matthew Lillard does save this movie. His, I love Tony Shalhoub, but the script is really doing nothing for him.
Yeah, I would
But
say it doesn't sound like it's a super fun role for him. Where
no,
when you describe Matthew Lillard as a psychic who's pretending to be an electrician, I was like, all right, I'm already sold.
but
He's
I'm
gonna be
in.
chewing
Yeah,
that up.
yeah. His character is like purely outrageous, and I just love watching him go nuts on a script he knows isn't that great. Like it's so good. Um Also, again, I'm gonna come back around to the unsung hero of this film also is Raw Digga. Which as I mentioned, she plays the family's nanny Maggie. And if you don't know Raw Digga, she was a rapper and she's an actress. She's so freaking funny in this movie and she saves everybody's butts. And spoiler, but like she is one of the few examples we have of a black female character as a final survivor of a 2000s horror film.
Hell yeah.
Not final survivor, but I mean,
But makes it is a
she
survivor.
is there in the end, yeah, and like kicks butt the entire time. So, we love Maggie, great character, and there is some really fun character development in this film, even though the I was gonna say the focus is the plot, but that's also not true. Just watch it. Just
You
watch
just
it.
gotta experience it,
Just
man.
make a snack, make a drink, buckle in, and have a great time. If you want just overall some juicy, goofy, somewhat nonsensical but utterly perfect 2000s horror, check out 13 Ghosts and then come back here and let me know what you thought of it, because I really do think premise wise it's one of the most interesting film premises I've seen to date. And I really, really, really hope we actually get that prequel anthology, because that I think would be like the icing on top, to be able to watch that and then go into 13 Ghosts with the knowledge of the ghost. I think would just make it mwah, excellent.
Delish.
Delicious.
Well, you've convinced me that I need to check it out, Midge.
Good, good. I did also, I was gonna say, I did read that it looks like if that anthology is happening, it is going to be produced through Dark Castle,
Oh, nice.
which I think is a necessity, even though I hope they do, like, I mean, elevate it, because it was 2001. Obviously, it would be better.
Yeah.
And I am adamant. I've been talking about this with some people online that, like, they're like, well, I don't know if I'm excited about it, or, you know, because sometimes you ruin a good thing.
Yeah.
Um, I'm in as long as they keep all the effects practical. I
Yeah.
do not want to see a single CGI moment on these ghosts, but I think it being through Dark Castle, they would preserve the integrity of that, and so it will still have like the feeling of the film, I think. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. I feel this is completely random, but it feels,
Yeah.
as you were describing it to me, I was like, it sounds like this is like the opposite of Jaws, where their like effects were fucking up. So they were like, don't show the effects. And it ended up being a better movie because of it. And this is one where it's like, we did all this work on the effects. You should have shown more of the effects.
I just, yeah, you know, somewhere the like costume designer and makeup artist for this film are just like, what the hell, man?
Like, well, fuck my drag.
Well, fuck my drag. Literally. Yeah, I want to see 100% more of the ghosts. That's my one complaint. But it also is super effective because I think it does leave you wanting more, which
Yeah.
it doesn't have a ton going for it. I promise it's good. It's just also good because it's stupid, and
Yeah.
that's
It's good to go in with open eyes.
go in with low expectations and then have a great time. Well, thank you all for letting me delve into this. I really do love this film. It's a lot of fun, and it's a great spooky season watch. So as we taper into the fall times, put it on your watch list. And if you enjoy it, let me know. If you enjoy this podcast, we would love to know. You can let us know by reviewing and rating us wherever you listen. And if you're very lucky, we might read it right here live on Ghouls Night In. I
Wow.
believe that Penny has a review to share with us today.
I sure do, Midge. This 5-star review comes from Allo83, and it's titled Spooky Love. This is my new favorite podcast. I'm late to the game, but look forward to each new drop. I'm a closeted spooky ghoul and love the silly convo and spooky topics discussed each week. And I'm already planning a 2024 trip to Midsummer Scream with my spooky bestie.
Oh, yay!
Incredible. Well, we hope we see you there in 2024, my
Yeah.
friend.
Yeah, as long as we're there and you're there, come find us. Say hello.
Heck yeah.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, definitely be sure to, if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, you can leave us a review there. Or if you cannot listen, or if you cannot listen to us, if you cannot review where you listen, you can always send us a DM over on Instagram and follow us over there. We are at Ghouls Night In Pod. And if you are looking for me, you can find me across the web at Midge Munster.
And you can find me at Penny Snark.
And until next time,
Good
good.